So in this video we're now going to lay down a Navmesh which is going to enable the enemy to walk around the map and be able to avoid obstacles, buildings, walk over bridges, that kind of thing. Okay, first of all let's just switch this off and switch the lights off so that we can get back to our default view. I'm just going to kind of zoom out of this so that we can see the entire map. So what this is going to do, it's going to cover this entire map in a low polygon mesh that's then going to tell the character where they can or cannot walk. Okay, so let's go to Window, AI, Navigation. Okay, and that opens this little pane over here on the right. Okay, we've got four areas. Agents. Okay, so an agent is effectively the enemy. Okay, and these elements are going to define the mesh itself. Okay, so the radius of the character, how big is the character, the height of the character, how high can they step up. So at the moment it's 0.75. If this was something like 5 meters, it would mean that the mesh could accommodate for that. So anything that is, let's say, 3 meters tall, the mesh would understand, well, the character can walk straight over that. So this tells it how high objects have to be before it excludes them from the walkable areas, and the slope, the max slope. So at the moment it's 45 degrees. If this was something like, let's say, 90 degrees straight up, it would mean the character could also walk up walls. So if you wanted like a superhero character who could maybe just walk straight up walls, you could do that if you wanted. At the moment, anything that is above 45 degree angle will be excluded from the walkable zones. This is how it can determine what is an obstacle. So for example, this big building here, it recognises, because these walls are at 90 degree angles, that is an obstacle. The character cannot walk up that, so it knows to exclude that area. Okay, you also get various areas, so you get walkable, not walkable, and jump areas. Now, we're not putting jump in our game. If you really do want to learn how to get a character to jump, leave me a message and I'm sure that I can work that in somewhere at the end of the series. But so far we're just going to work with walkable and not walkable. Now the bake, this is how we're actually going to create the mesh itself over the terrain. So we're actually going to leave these at default at the moment. So agent radius is 0.5 and agent height is 2. Max slope and step height, we're just going to leave those. Okay, so in order for this to work, the objects have to be marked as static. So if I just click on, for example, let me just click on this building for now, a part of the building, go to the inspector, we will notice that we actually did this before. Static, we did it for the occlusion sort of thing. Okay, so it is already marked as static. Now the thing that it's looking for is to make sure that it is navigation static. Now I believe almost everything was made static with the exception of the water. So let's click on the water plane if we can. There we go, we've got it selected. I can see it at the bottom there, water plane 2. This is not marked as static, which means the nav mesh will ignore it. So what I want to do, I want to click the drop down. I actually just want to make it navigation static, but not anything else, otherwise the water just disappears from the renderer. Okay, so now that it's navigation static, what we can do is just clicking anywhere, it doesn't really matter, it can be on the terrain, you can click, you can have nothing selected and it still works. Let's just go to our bake section and just click bake. That has to, down here we can see that it's doing something, it's actually exporting the data. Okay, so it's creating a mesh for this scene. Now it may take a while for that to do. It depends on what settings you have set. Okay, so the higher the settings, the higher the mesh becomes. Okay, the more detailed the mesh. The lower the settings, the lower this setting, so if it's 0.2 the more detailed the mesh. If it's higher, if it's like agent radius is 1, the less detailed is the mesh. So the nav mesh is finished rendering. It's actually baked into the map now, and we can see any area that is blue is an area that the character can walk along. The areas that are cut out are areas that it deems that the character cannot walk along. Okay, so any areas where there's buildings and that kind of thing, we can see these little blocks. The character would have to walk around those areas. Okay, so depending on what kind of settings are set on here will depend on how accurate this nav mesh is. If you make any changes to the settings, you have to rebake it. So it can actually take quite a long time to get it just right. What we need to be aware of is if there are any parts where the nav mesh doesn't connect, like for example this part to that part, the character may be able to actually jump over that little piece, or the character could just stop and not be able to enter that building. It really depends on the gap between one part of the nav mesh and the other. Wherever there isn't a blue nav mesh, obviously the character can't walk there, so wouldn't be able to walk where that actual that broken down vehicle is. Now overall, this isn't too bad. I can see that this is weird on this bridge. It's simply because there's a couple of broken boards there, so the character when walking across this bridge would have to walk that way, go around, walk that way, go around, walk that way. Okay, so that's a little unusual, and I'll be showing you how to fix elements like that shortly. So overall it does a relatively good job. Now what we have to be aware of is that the character can get everywhere where he needs to. So we can definitely climb up those stairs and into that area, but obviously that's closed door there anyway. So once you put a nav mesh down, it's then just a case of going through it and just visually checking that everything is matching up, and that you can walk there. Now because we did make the water static, you can see there are areas on the water as well that are marked with this blue mesh. So currently our character should be able to just walk straight over the water. Obviously we will fix that shortly. But now that we have a little bit of a nav mesh going on, we're actually going to get our character to start moving. In a later video we're going to refine this nav mesh and make it much better, much more accurate. While we've got this down, just for testing purposes, we can start writing a script that's going to get our character, the enemy character, to start walking along this nav mesh.